Prince William and Catherine have just confirmed something the palace had apparently been holding back for weeks. And honestly, the way this information finally came out tells you more than the announcement itself does. King Charles's cancer is incurable. That is the word coming from royal insiders. The phrasing is not just alarming, it is final. He will most likely live with the disease rather than overcome it. Not necessarily die from it tomorrow, but the condition is no longer being approached as something the palace expects to defeat. And the strangest part of all of this is that the palace did not shake from shouting or confrontation. It shook from silence. 5 minutes after the private confirmation reached the royal household, Prince William and Catherine made an announcement nobody was prepared to receive. And the way they chose to deliver it essentially rewrote the family's internal dynamic in real time. Before we go any further, hit subscribe to Crown Watch so you do not miss updates as this situation continues to develop. Here is where the weight of this really lands. Prince William did not move quickly toward the announcement. He stood over it the way a man stands over a sentence that has the power to divide his life into before and after. Catherine stayed close beside him, near enough to feel the shift in his breathing, quiet enough to let him absorb the first shock by himself. And then came the line that changed everything. Senior royal duties would now be urgently reviewed. That single phrase carried enormous significance because it was not just a health update. It signaled that the palace was actively preparing for a possible redistribution of the work that keeps the crown functioning day to day. Catherine watched Prince William read the final line twice. His hand tightened around the page and then slowly released, as though even the physical reflex of anger could not alter what was already written there. That is not theatrical description. That is the bodily response of someone receiving news that reorganizes the entire shape of their life. King Charles was not even in the room when the confirmation was being prepared, and that absence struck everyone more forcefully than any spoken warning could have. The king had always been the fixed point in these decisions, the one giving final approval, the one whose presence gave every major palace movement its authority. Now, the silence where the monarch usually stood became the clearest evidence that something had shifted at the deepest level. The sealed health update arrived following a private palace briefing, which is a controlled meeting where trusted medical advisors deliver confidential information before any public statement is shaped. A medical advisor, in straightforward terms, is a doctor trusted to guide official decisions when a royal health matter affects public duty. That context matters enormously because the family was no longer dealing with quiet concern or cautious whispers. They were dealing with a formal warning serious enough to reach Prince William and Catherine before anyone else was permitted inside. That is not standard procedure. That is triage. Prince William finally set the paper down. He did not slam it. He did not speak across anyone in the room. That restraint made the moment more devastating to witness. Catherine saw not only the future king managing himself in real time, but a son fighting to keep his grief contained before the country could even begin to process what he was carrying. She knew the words would be replayed across every screen and discussed at every table. But she also knew the wound behind them belonged first to a family. A private instruction moved through the household with quiet urgency. No unnecessary movement, no public denial, and no informal comment from any royal office until Prince William had spoken. That order existed for a reason. One careless sentence could undermine public trust. One false reassurance could make a genuine tragedy feel like a concealment. The palace was managing for control. The family was reaching for time. But King Charles's condition had made both things harder to hold. Prince William looked toward Catherine before the final confirmation was released. She did not offer a speech or a prepared response. She simply stayed present, and that was sufficient. He understood that once the words left the room, the grief would no longer belong only to his family. It would belong to the monarchy, to the people, and to every person close enough to the crown to be tested by what came next. And as Prince William's words entered the world, the crisis stopped being only about King Charles's health and became something larger. It became a measure of everyone standing nearest to the crown. Inside the palace, the announcement landed differently on every person who heard it. For Prince William, it carried the sound of a childhood fear returning in fully adult form. For Catherine, it was a summons to stand beside him while the ground beneath their family moved. For King Charles, it was the sharpest reminder that even a monarch cannot negotiate with time. And for Camila, it was the opening of a loneliness that no title in the world could reach. Prince William stared at the announcement draft as though the page had grown heavier with every word he read. He was no longer standing there only as a son. He was standing there as heir, meaning the person next in line to carry the full weight of the crown when the monarch can no longer do so. King Charles's health crisis had pulled the future forward, not as a ceremony to anticipate, but as a burden that had arrived ahead of schedule. The monarchy needed steadiness, and the future king was already aware that every eye in the room had turned toward him. Catherine placed one hand over Prince William's without trying to redirect him or pull him out of what he was feeling. She understood his silence before anyone thought to ask him to explain it. She knew the difference between the grief a person carries privately and the duty they wear for a watching institution. She knew when the prince was choosing words for public consumption while keeping the real pain sealed somewhere no statement could reach. Her composure held weight in that room because if he broke, the entire space would feel it. King Charles had made one request before the announcement moved forward. He wanted Prince William and Catherine to be the ones to confirm the news. Not a medical secretary, not a palace aide, not an official voice reading from a prepared document. A palace aide, in simple terms, is a trusted staff member who helps manage royal duties and private communications. The king's choice mattered because the monarch wanted the future of the crown to speak with a single voice. He wanted strength in the delivery, but he wanted tenderness in the human behind it. Camilla received the news separately, and the queen consort did not reach toward anyone. She sat very still in her chair as the door closed, her face drained of color, her hands motionless, her title suddenly offering no protection against the silence gathering around her. She had stood beside King Charles through difficult seasons before, but this felt entirely different. This was not a public controversy or a family disagreement. This was the king's body forcing the palace into decisions that no one's heart was ready to make. A senior aide quietly removed a public engagement folder from King Charles's desk. Public engagements are the official appearances and visits through which the royal family represents the crown before the people. That small act carried a significance nobody wanted to name out loud. Some of those appearances might not happen as planned. Prince William saw the empty space where the folder had been. Catherine saw his expression change. Camilla heard the silence after the door closed and understood that the familiar rhythm of things had cracked. The announcement had already shaken the palace, but the deepest wound was still concealed behind it. Prince William knew it. Catherine felt it. King Charles had been preparing for it. And Camilla, sitting alone with the truth, began to understand that the confirmation was only what was visible on the surface. To understand why this moment carried such devastating force, you have to look back to the point where everything changed. Every royal crisis has a moment that later feels impossible to have missed. This one did not begin with a public incident or a dramatic headline. It began with a private dinner at Windsor that no camera recorded. During what was intended to be a calm family evening, King Charles reached for his glass, paused mid-conversation, and turned toward Prince William with an expression that made the room go quiet. That was the moment nobody in that room would forget. King Charles had walked into that dinner with a clear intention. He wanted one quiet evening, one measured conversation about the future of royal duties. One opportunity to speak practically without fear spreading through the household. Future royal duties are the public appearances, state visits, and official engagements through which the monarchy remains visible and active. Those duties were not simply calendar entries. They were evidence that the monarch remained strong enough to lead. Prince William noticed the change before anyone put a name to it. He had been listening to the king speak about scheduling matters when the monarch's voice thinned. Catherine looked across the table and saw his fingers press against the edge, as though he was holding himself upright through sheer discipline. She did not interrupt. She did not raise alarm in the room, but she understood in that instant that this was not ordinary fatigue. This was the body sending a warning to the crown. King Charles tried to continue. He pushed through another sentence, then stopped again. That second pause held more fear than any direct admission could have carried. Prince William pushed back his chair. Not dramatically, not with any performance in the gesture, but sharply enough that everyone in the room heard it. The sound cut through. The sun had stepped back and something else had taken his place. Catherine saw it happen. She recognized the moment the future king had crossed from concern into action. The dinner ended early. No elaborate explanation followed. A confidential medical review was ordered once King Charles had returned to his private rooms. A medical review means a serious assessment by trusted doctors to determine what the king could safely continue doing. That mattered because the palace was no longer asking whether something was wrong. It was asking what could still be managed without the public knowing the full picture. Catherine found Prince William alone in a corridor afterward, looking toward King Charles' closed door. The prince did not speak immediately. He stood there carrying the knowledge that a father's physical decline could become a nation's turning point. The princess remained beside him, and the quiet between them confirmed they had both understood what the evening had revealed. The family had crossed into territory from which there was no return. King Charles's private team began quietly assembling a reduced duty plan without briefing the wider household. That plan involved moving some responsibilities away from the king in order to protect what remained of his health. Every shifted duty would whisper the same truth. The monarch was carrying considerably less than the public had been given to believe. The dinner had brought the fear into the open. What followed exposed the fractures that fear had been holding together. The palace had navigated scandals, resignations, estrangements, and public storms throughout its long history, but nothing that had come before felt quite as dangerous as the private confrontation that followed the health confirmation. No cameras, no carefully selected balcony appearances, no polished statement prepared to limit the damage. Just Prince William, Catherine, Camila, and King Charles in one room with the truth sitting between them like something sharp and unavoidable. Camila moved first. The Queen Consort wanted to know why she had not been involved in shaping the wording of the announcement, why Prince William and Catherine had been the ones to speak, and why the king's condition had been placed before the public with such unsparing honesty. The health confirmation, the official family statement about the king's serious decline, had not only described an illness, it had altered the balance of trust inside the palace. King Charles sat beside a small table, present but clearly carrying the weight of the room. He did not interrupt at first. He watched Camilla speak, then watched Prince William standing near the door, positioned as though he was guarding both his father and whatever came next. The prince understood the stakes of this room. If the family broke apart here, the public would eventually sense it. If the truth was turned into a weapon between them, the monarchy would begin to weaken from within. Camilla said the words had made King Charles appear diminished. Her voice carried fear, but it arrived in the room like an accusation. Prince William answered with a quietness that held real force. He told the Queen Consort that concealing the truth would have made the family appear dishonest, and dishonesty would have done far more lasting damage to the crown than any honest disclosure. Catherine saw his jaw tighten. She saw Camilla's expression harden in response. She recognized that grief was turning into blame, and she moved before the room broke open completely. The princess did not raise her voice, but her words cut through. She reminded everyone present that King Charles was still sitting there, still listening, still a person beneath the institution. The monarchy had already asked a great deal of his body. It could not now ask him to sit quietly while the people around him argued over how visibly fragile he was permitted to appear. King Charles eventually spoke, through what was later recorded by a senior household note-taker. The king said he had personally approved Prince William and Catherine's role in the announcement. He had trusted them to protect both the monarchy and the public in the same moment. The crown, meaning the royal institution, and the weight of duty attached to it, needed one voice that could hold steady. In that room, the monarch made clear which voice he believed capable of carrying it. Prince William did not look like someone who had won anything. He looked like someone absorbing a loss. Catherine stayed close, fully aware that what had just happened was not a victory. It was a wound that had been made official. Camila heard the second truth a moment later. Certain royal duties had already been reviewed, and some responsibilities were expected to move toward Prince William sooner than the household had been told. The queen consort went still, because that was the part nobody had said plainly until now. King Charles lowered his gaze, and the room shifted around that silence. The king had not only confirmed his trust in his son, he had confirmed a transfer. Camilla understood it. Catherine felt it settle. Prince William accepted it as the weight it was. From that moment, the crisis was no longer only about health or grief, or the pain of a family caught in a situation none of them had chosen. It had become about control. And inside the palace, questions of control carried their own particular kind of danger. Power within the monarchy rarely announces itself loudly. It moves through folders and signatures and schedules, and through who is asked to enter the room first. Following the confirmation, one reality became impossible to look away from. Prince William was no longer standing at a distance from history. He was being drawn into it. And Catherine, steady but visibly carrying something heavy, had become the person helping him hold what King Charles could no longer fully manage alone. Prince William sat in front of the duty folder without turning the page. A duty folder is a private collection of schedules, public commitments, and official tasks prepared for working royals. This was not administrative paperwork. Every page revealed a gap where the king might no longer appear, and every line with a replacement name pushed the future king closer to a role he had never wanted to step into through suffering. Catherine watched him sit with that. She understood that moving forward could look like strength to the outside world, but inside the family it felt like grief dressed in responsibility. She told Prince William that protecting King Charles did not mean taking his place before the king had chosen to give it. It meant creating enough space for the monarch to define what his remaining strength could still look like. Her words mattered because the palace required steadiness, but the prince needed permission to be a son before he was asked to become a symbol. King Charles's reduced schedule was no longer being treated as a temporary adjustment. The king's condition had transformed it into something with genuine constitutional and emotional dimensions. Constitutional, in plain terms, refers to anything connected to how the monarchy operates within the country's governing structure. King Charles was not only a father trying to manage his health. He was the monarch, and every canceled engagement raised public questions about who would carry the crown's responsibilities going forward. A palace aide entered quietly with a marked list from King Charles's office. Through a documented household account, it emerged that the king had already placed Prince William's name beside several upcoming engagements before the public announcement had been made. The monarch had understood the shape of his own decline earlier than most of the people surrounding him. He had not been careless or passive. He had been quietly preparing. That discovery affected Prince William more profoundly than any direct instruction could have, because it confirmed his father had been thinking about the future while still managing to conceal how much the present was costing him. Prince William turned toward Catherine and admitted what he had been holding since the morning. He said he had never wanted this moment to arrive through pain. The princess did not reach for easy reassurance. She reminded him that King Charles still had his dignity, still held choices of his own, and still had a son capable of protecting both. The future king heard her, but the weight did not lift. It only found a deeper place to settle. Camila discovered the shift when a decision that would previously have reached her first moved instead through Prince William's office. She stood very still when she understood that certain communications were now being reviewed by the prince before receiving final approval. She had been prepared for grief. She had been prepared for illness. But influence moving without announcement felt like a different kind of loss entirely. A crisis, she realized, could rearrange everything around a person before they had finished processing what had changed. King Charles remained the center, but the institution had begun turning around Prince William. Catherine observed it. Camilla experienced it. The prince could no longer treat it as something temporary. Power had not arrived with a crown or a speech. It had come through altered schedules, carefully chosen words, and a father who had been preparing his son quietly before either of them was ready. By the following morning, the palace had stopped asking what had happened. It was responding to what could no longer be reversed. Morning came, but the palace did not feel rested. It felt injured. The announcement about King Charles's health had moved faster than any official could contain, and inside the royal household, every corridor seemed to carry its own version of the same fear. Staff exchanged cautious words over changed schedules. Aides removed names from briefing papers, and Camilla, standing alone by a window, understood that the rhythm she had known was not coming back. She watched an aide remove the king's next engagement card from the board without asking anyone's permission. She did not move to stop it. She watched the card disappear, and her expression traveled from disbelief into something quieter and more permanent. An engagement card is a scheduled note for an official royal appearance, and removing it meant King Charles might not attend as planned. Every empty seat the king left behind would say something the palace could not control. Prince William received the first call before the household had found its footing in the morning. He paused before answering because every ring now sounded less like support and more like preparation. A senior coordinator, meaning an experienced palace official trusted with royal decisions, communicated that emergency scheduling revisions had already begun. The family was no longer waiting to see how things developed. The palace was reorganizing itself around the king's diminished capacity before the public had grasped the full shape of it. Catherine stood close enough to hear Prince William's answers becoming shorter. She recognized that brevity for what it was. Not coldness, control. He was being asked to step into a more visible role, not as ceremony or celebration, but as an urgent institutional response to a father's decline. He was being drawn forward while still trying to remain a son. Catherine saw the cost of that division before anyone else in the building did. King Charles's reduced duties prompted private communication with senior family members. The king had not disappeared from the center of power, but his condition had forced those around him to begin moving before the public could see the full outline of the crisis. The monarchy depends on continuity, and continuity means the crown must present a steady face even when the family behind it is quietly shaken. The palace drafted two versions of the next public statement simultaneously. One carried a note of hope, the other was considerably more severe in its honesty. A public statement is the official message released when the royal household wants one controlled account of events to reach the country. Two drafts meant genuine, uncertainty. It meant that no one could fully guarantee that the next words would offer comfort rather than deepen the wound already open in the public. Catherine learned through a private briefing note that King Charles had specifically asked her to remain close to Prince William throughout all upcoming meetings. She absorbed that detail quietly, but it struck something deep. The king was not only placing his trust in his son, he was trusting her to keep the future king steady in the moments when duty became heavier than one person could hold. Prince William looked at her when she told him, and for a moment no title in either of their lives carried any weight at all. Only the fear they were holding together did. When Prince William finally entered King Charles's room without aids, the crisis reduced itself to its most essential shape: a king, his heir. And the words neither of them had found a way to say until now. For all the palace corridors, protocols, titles, and carefully managed statements, the moment that would matter most took place in a room where none of that architecture offered any protection. King Charles was not a symbol in those minutes. Prince William was not only the heir, they were a father and a son sitting close enough for silence to carry everything that pride had kept sealed. Catherine waited outside. For once, the monarchy had nothing positioned between grief and the truth. Prince William entered alone because King Charles had asked for it that way. He left Catherine outside the door, despite every instinct in him wanting her steadying presence nearby. A private royal room, in plain terms, is a protected space where family matters can be spoken without staff, advisors, or institutional pressure shaping what is said. That mattered because this conversation was no longer about strategy. It was a father telling his son what fear had done to him and what he needed the son to become. King Charles looked at Prince William with a gentleness the palace rarely permitted itself. The king understood that the announcement had rearranged everything, and he knew the future king had been the one to carry the first shock in public. The monarchy now faced a painful new reality, meaning the family and the institution together had to prepare for reduced royal duties, changed responsibilities, and far greater weight on the heir. Nobody in the building could maintain the pretense that this was a difficult week that would pass. King Charles told Prince William he was sorry, not for being ill, not for needing help. He was sorry the responsibility had arrived this way, through fear rather than through any kind of calm and considered handover. Prince William lowered his head before answering. He said he was not angry about the weight of it. He was afraid of losing his father somewhere inside it. Those words dissolved every layer of royal distance between them. For a moment, there was no crown in the room, only love that had been placed under extraordinary pressure. King Charles reached for his son's hand. The gesture was quiet, but it held decades of things that had never been said easily between them. The king had lived his entire adult life inside the demands of duty, and the prince had learned young how much silence those demands could require. Now both men sat with the full truth between them. King Charles was still the monarch, but he was also a father asking his son to find his footing before either of them had finished grieving what was being lost. King Charles then explained, through a recorded private family conversation, later preserved in palace notes, why he had chosen Prince William and Catherine to confirm the news to the world. He wanted the public to see continuity paired with genuine compassion. Continuity means the crown does not appear fractured even as one person steps back from it. But King Charles also wanted honesty. He wanted the country to see the future taking shape without feeling abandoned by the present. Prince William listened through all of it without interrupting. He understood that Catherine had not been chosen as a supporting figure. She had been chosen as a source of genuine strength. The king trusted her judgment, her steadiness, and her ability to hold the future king together in the moments when grief threatened to overtake everything else. The king also made one thing plain. Camila had to be protected from public humiliation, but she could not be allowed to reshape the emotional truth of the announcement into something more comfortable. Her pain was real and it deserved acknowledgement. But the public deserved honesty more than the palace deserved the relief of softer language. Prince William rose slowly when the conversation was done. He did not look relieved. He looked altered. King Charles watched him stand and move toward the door, with pride and sorrow present in equal measure, knowing the son who had entered carrying fear was leaving carrying something closer to resolve. Catherine read his face the moment the door opened. She understood before a single word passed between them. The private pain had finally been spoken, but outside the palace gates, a country was already deciding what the moment meant to them. By midday, the story had left the palace entirely. It had moved into homes and offices and crowded streets where people stopped what they were doing and simply stayed with it. The confirmation about King Charles's health had become more than a royal update. It had become a national pause. And outside Buckingham Palace, people gathered quietly, not for ceremony, but for something more instinctive. The recognition that something at the center of things was trembling. Prince William saw the first wave of public reaction on a muted screen, and for a moment he did not move. He and Catherine had not hidden behind cold institutional language. They had carried the truth out themselves, and now it was everywhere. A royal update, in straightforward terms, is an official message about something important affecting the family or the crown. This one was about the king's health and about what the monarchy was going to look like on the other side of it. Catherine stood beside Prince William as broadcasters replayed his words in sequence. She heard one presenter describe the moment as a defining test for the monarchy, noting the prince's composure and the steadiness of her presence beside him. The public was not only absorbing the news, it was reading the people delivering it to determine who looked capable of carrying what came next. Catherine understood that her stillness had become part of the message, whether she had intended it that way or not. A small gathering formed near the gates of Buckingham Palace. One elderly woman placed a white rose against the iron railing and said quietly that the king had looked tired for a long time. Buckingham Palace, for those unfamiliar, is one of the monarchy's most recognized working residences and a public marker of royal life. People did not come there by accident. They came because the news had made the symbol feel unexpectedly human. Prince William watched that moment and looked away. He was not ashamed of what the people outside were feeling. He was shaken by it, because strangers had found their way to something he had been trying to hold inside since the Windsor dinner. Catherine noticed his reaction and stayed close without filling the silence with words. A newspaper front page carried a stark headline about the king stepping back while Prince William and Catherine guided the nation through the difficulty ahead. The words landed heavily inside the palace because they made the transition feel formal, even before every decision had been announced. A front page is where a newspaper places its most significant story. The public had already chosen the image they would associate with this moment. One broadcaster observed that the defining image of the day was not a crown, or a balcony, or a ceremonial procession. It was Catherine standing beside Prince William as he delivered the hardest confirmation of his life. The princess heard the description later through a recorded media briefing, and it unsettled her. She had not been standing there to become a symbol. She had been standing there because the prince needed her, because the king had trusted her, and because the country needed something to hold on to. Camila heard the public reaction from another room, and understood that the nation had already begun moving emotionally toward Prince William and Catherine. She felt the weight of that, but she also understood why it was happening. Illness generates fear. Fear searches for wherever steadiness appears to live. The king had already decided where that steadiness should come from, long before anyone else had thought to ask the question. The tragic confirmation about King Charles's health did not break the monarchy. It stripped away the surface of it and revealed what had been underneath all along. The fear beneath the ceremony, the love beneath the duty, and the cost of a crown that passes through grief rather than celebration. Prince William and Catherine did not simply deliver difficult information, they carried a wounded family through its most human passage, and in doing so changed what leadership was understood to mean. King Charles accepted the reduced role with quiet dignity. He set down his pen after signing the revised duty plan and looked toward Prince William with pride rather than defeat. A revised duty plan means a changed schedule of responsibilities shaped to protect the monarch's health while keeping the crown's work continuing. This was not surrender. It was a father placing truth above pride and a king placing the future above appearance. Prince William did not smile when King Charles looked at him. He understood what the look meant and what it was asking him to carry. Succession, in plain terms, is the order by which the crown passes to the next person when the current monarch is no longer able to bear it. The public had stopped experiencing that as distant tradition. They now saw it as a living responsibility held by real people, navigating real grief behind every title they held. Catherine stood beside Prince William in the aftermath, not speaking over him, not taking the moment from him, but providing the kind of steadiness that allows another person to remain upright when their private pain has become visible to an entire nation. She had become something beyond a calm presence. She had become the quiet force that helped the future king hold his shape when everything around him was shifting. Prince William knew it, King Charles knew it, and the palace felt it in every room. Camilla's grief remained genuine. She had lost the rhythm that had defined her life beside King Charles. She had watched decisions begin to flow toward Prince William and Catherine faster than she could emotionally absorb, but she arrived in time, at the hardest understanding available to her. Protecting the king meant accepting the future he himself had chosen to place in their hands. Her pain did not dissolve. It simply stopped resisting the truth. King Charles had been preparing for this transition, emotionally and practically, before anyone around him had understood what he was doing. Through documented private accounts preserved in palace notes, his intention became clear. He had chosen honesty over concealment, at the moment when concealment would have been easiest. He had not wanted the monarchy to shelter behind polished language. He had wanted the country to see steadiness and family and the willingness to say a true thing even when it cost something to say it. Prince William carried that honesty forward. Catherine gave it the grace to reach people who needed to receive it. King Charles gave it his permission. And Camilla, wounded but no longer in opposition to what was happening around her, accepted that love sometimes means releasing the grip on what you most wanted to hold. This was not only heartbreaking news about a king's declining health. This was the moment Prince William and Catherine became something the monarchy had rarely needed quite so visibly before. Its human face in the middle of its most human hour. King Charles gave the institution honesty. Prince William gave it steadiness. Catherine gave it grace. And together, in the space where ceremony had no reach, they carried a moment of real sorrow into something the crown could continue to build from.